Greetings everyone, this is Long Yu. I'm going to continue with part 5 on the discussion about dragons in Buddhism. Makar's sea dragons. In ancient myth of the Indian subcontinent, Makars are pervasive. Makar is a Sanskrit word which means sea dragon or water monster, but that's an inaccurate description. It is a mythical sea creature. I would hesitate to say mythical because it really does exist. It is usually described as a half-terrestrial animal, such as an elephant, crocodile, or deer in the frontal part, and half-aquatic animal in the other part, usually of a fish or seal. Makar is equivalent to the zodiac sign Capricorn, which is a sea goat. It is considered to be the vehicle of Hindu river goddess Ganga, Narmada, and the sea god Varuna. Makars as ornaments are protective. Several Hindu gods, Shiva, Vishnu, and Surya, wear makar-shaped rings called makar kundals. Buildings and temples have statues or heads of makars as protectors. This is similar to the Viking practice of dragon-headed figureheads of ships to scare away evil. In Buddhist temples, makars appear on temple roofs and doorways. Makars also appear on sacred bells and dorjes in Vajrayana Buddhism. Alright, this is actually the end of that part of dragons in Buddhism. Now I'm going to begin the other story. Now this is an account of someone who grew up, I think, in Tibet. As a child, believed in dragons, believed they really existed, but then moved to some, I think, part of India to study, go to university or something, and they got brainwashed from Western thinking, was around too much people of Western-minded thinking who didn't believe in dragons, who thought they were just mythical beings like most people do in the West. And so then he started to lose his real belief in dragons, and he then began to think that they were fake. But after some time, when he went back to Tibet, he started to hear people's real stories and accounts of actually seeing these dragons. And in the conclusion of this story, he says that he fully believes in the dragons, that truth is truth, and that there's no doubt in his mind that they exist. So now, that's the summary of the story. So I'm going to go ahead and read the story now. Dragons, Drogpa and Drukpa Kargyu Master. In the West, dragons are the stuff of myth, legend, and wonderful children's stories. But to Tibetan nomads or Drogpa, dragons are real, and seeing them is always an auspicious sign. To be really frank about these things is something that conventionally you cannot explain, whether it's comprised of the 4 elements, or if it's a form, a substantial body of some kind, or if it's ethereal, or just a mental body, or what. There is something, but it's really impossible to say what. So nobody can say for sure that dragons aren't real. Scientists would explain that they are not real because from the beginning they don't accept anything beyond the material or anything spiritual, so that's that for them. They just explain it according to the physical elements, but in all these nomadic places, people believe 100% that these things are real because they've had ages and ages of experience. Just because science hasn't seen something isn't evidence to refute it. There's a different reality and a different world in every single person, and none of us can refute that. That's from Gebchak Wangdrak Rinpoche in a recent conversation. While I was traveling in eastern Tibet last summer with my Tibetan friend Dawa, I visited Sonam Wangbo and his family, nomads who live in the remote, beautiful, and sacred Dahu Valley. We traveled on horseback for many bottom-aching hours to reach his spring home of high and flower-filled pastures. When we arrived, we settled in front of his stove with the Tibetan staple, a bowl of sampa. Local gossip and stories were shared, and then, idly, I found myself asking him if he'd ever seen a dragon. Yes, in the high summer pastures a year or two back, he said. Casually, using his hands, he proceeded to describe how a dragon had descended, pushing a thick cloud down towards the mountain, and had then spiraled back up into the sea. He told us that his grandma saw one fleeting, too, in high summer pastures when she was young. He then moved on to the topic of a new Chinese road coming through the valley below and the impact it might have for him and his family. The dragons were forgotten. I have heard a number of stories of contemporary dragon sightings from Tibetan friends and realized that nomads in high, remote places more frequently make these sightings, which are often accompanied by turbulent weather conditions. The nomads for Drokpa, which roughly translated means people of the solitudes, frequent high, lonely alpine grasslands unsuitable for settled farming, moving their herds of yak, sheep, and goats up to 5 times a year according to the seasons. In certain parts of Tibet, nomads also go high into remoter mountains in the spring to collect the highly prized medicinal cordyceps, otherwise known as caterpillar, fungus, or yetsa gombu in Tibetan. From the stories I've heard, it seems that these solitary places are also the favorite haunts of dragons. Ani Tenzin Yangchen, a nun at Gebchak Wangdrak Rinpoche's retreat center in Nangchen, told me how she and her nomad family had seen a dragon when they were collecting cordyceps fungus in a valley near their nomad camp last spring. She told me that they have seen dragons on other occasions, adding, "When a dragon arises, the wind gets choppy, and the clouds move around fast, and it all gets very violent. You only see dragons in very high altitude places, the tops of mountains. You don't see them in lower altitude places." A Drukpa Kargyu master. I first heard stories of dragons in Tibet from my precious friend Druga Chogyal Rinpoche, a noted Tibetan Buddhist master and artist. I first met him in the Tashijong Tibetan community in India in 1994, when I went to interview him about his exquisite watercolor paintings. Chogyal Rinpoche is the 8th reincarnation of the Drugu Chogyal lineage of the Drukpa Kargyu. The Drukpa Kargyu is a line of great masters, otherwise known as the Dragon Yogis. It was established by Tsangpa Gyare, who, in search of a site to build his monastery, saw 9 dragons or druk ascending from the earth into the sky with loud, thunderous roars at a place called Nam, near Lhasa. Due to this auspicious sighting, he called the place Namdruk, meaning sky dragons, and built his monastery there. He and his group of followers became known as Druk, or the dragon lineage. In Tibet, Chogyal Rinpoche is a spiritual guide to the people of Todrugu, an area located northwest of Chamdo. Todrugu is comprised of 6 nomadic tribal groups, and getting from one end to the other end requires a day's journey by horse. As described by Rinpoche, the area is a pasture where yaks, horses, and sheep can graze. The nomads' black yak-haired tents can be seen settled over widely scattered areas. It is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. There are many white rock mountains, streams, and forests. Over many years, Kogyal Rinpoche has shared with me his stories and insights of the Tibet he remembers. Brought to life by his magical and unique watercolor paintings, I have especially loved and been fascinated by his descriptions and depictions of dragons. From our conversations, I have transcribed the stories that follow. Alright, this is going to be great. I'm going to stop here, and then we will continue on with the next part in the next video.